Okay, so we are learning the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Behaloscha, Tes Sivan, the 9th of Sivan. The year is Tafshin Chav Zayin, 1967. So right around, not too long after the 6-Day War. So this seems to be, I'm learning it together Bechavrusa with you guys, but it seems like this is an interesting Farbrengen. But this is also right after Shavuos. So Shavuos is Vav Zayin, this is Tes. So it's the 9th of Sivan, already holding the 15th of Sivan. Okay. So it says like this. The Farbrengen starts as Kvoi Kedushas Admir Shlita, the Rebbe, Tzivul Enagin Nigan HaBal Shemtov. He instructed the people at the Farbrengen to start with the Bal Shemtov, the Holy Bal Shemtov song, like it says in footnote number 1, which is known as the 3 notes that is connected to the Bal Shemtov, the Magid, and the Alter Rebbe. The Hiskir and the Rebbe mentioned like this, that Hapiskam Hayidua, the known saying of Kvo Kedushas Maricham Admer from my father-in-law, meaning the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Shaydei Nigun, what's the significance of singing a song of a Rebbe? So the Rebbe says that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe says, Shaydei Nigun, when one sings the song of a Rebbe, in this case the Bal Shemtov, the Magid, and the Alter Rebbe, is Miskashim in Bal HaNigun, you connect with the author, the one who composed this, the composer of the song, even more, even more, if you were to say over a saying the tzaddik, we're holding page 77 in the beginning, the Rebbe is just starting the Farbrengen, that the Rebbe says when we sing a song on nigun of a tzaddik, of a Rebbe, so it connects even higher than if we were to say over a Torah idea of this tzaddik, in a way that you could see those who are able to zone in when they sing a song of a tzaddik, that you could see even if you're able to say a Torah in front in the name of a tzaddik, to the extent that you could see that as if the person was standing in front of you, the idea of a nigun is even greater. So for the power of a nigun of a tzaddik is an idea of iskashrus, of connection. Okay, this is going to and that's going to be, we're going to start off with stories of the Bal Shemtov. The Rebbe says like this, Bein HaSipurim, we know the power of a story. Bein HaSipurim shesiper Kvoi Kedushas Maricham Admer b'Chag HaShavuos, amongst the stories that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe told on Shavuos, Yeshna gam HaSiper shesiper b'Chag HaShavuos, there's also the story, means that evidently the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe would tell stories on Shavuos. So there's the story that he told in the year Tov Reish Tzadik Vav, which is 1936. He says, Kvoi Kedushas Admer Maricham Admer Diber Az Oides Hayaches Shel Bal Shemtov LaNashim Pshutim. He spoke then regarding the special, unique relationship the Bal Shemtov had with simple people. So we're gonna skip down to footnote number 6. He says, Kvoi Kedushas Admer Shlita Amar, the Rebbe said, B'tur Maimer Muzgar, as a side note, that when you say Nashim Pshutim, seemingly it's may possibly a derogatory or a simplistic kind of expression about people, that they're simple. So the Rebbe says, Shanashim Pshutim Einim Elu Shiyoshein B'Shashim Dam Divrei Torah. So the Rebbe says something, the Rebbe saying something sharp. What does it mean that someone who's simple? It doesn't mean someone that would come to Farbrengen or comes to a gathering and goes to sleep as opposed to listening to the Divrei Torah. When it comes time to sing the song of the Bal Shemtov, that you connect to the composer of the song. Instead of singing, they talk instead of singing, right? So they don't listen to the Dvar Torah, and they don't sing. Instead of singing, they talk. So the Rebbe says that's not the definition of a simple person. The Rebbe says he finds it interesting that he can't find any other time to talk wasteful talk aside from when they should be singing the song of the Bal Shemtov. The Rebbe is obviously, people were talking at the Farbrengen while they were singing the song of the Bal Shemtov. Not only are you disturbing and nullifying and disconnecting yourself from the song and the person you're talking to, You're disturbing people. People are trying to sing, you're disturbing people in front of you, beside you. So the Rebbe says that's not the definition of a simple person. It means a simple person is not a person who does things that they shouldn't be doing or is obnoxious, etc. He doesn't say what is a simple person, but maybe we'll get there. The Rebbe says, Elu shmitzat kam sibus was the Rebbe says, what is the definition of a simple person? People, for whatever reason, they didn't have the ability to learn Torah. Or to fulfill the mitzvahs in a diligent way because of their simple knowledge or simple opportunities. And nevertheless, or because of that, not nevertheless, that the Bal Shemtov really they were precious to him. They were special, and he supported and he gave a special attention to them. So Biktur Hagdama Lasipar, so when the previous Rebbe said the story, he gave a Hagdama, a preface to the story. Chazar Mama Nifler, he repeated the famous idea, meaning the Rebbe says in Yiddish, a gewaltige Wort, a very impressive idea. Sh'amar Rava Magid, that the Magid, the Mizrich, said, La'achri Stalkus Al Shemtov, after the passing of the Bal Shemtov. Okay, saying stories of the Bal Shemtov is such a powerful Yeshua. Like we said before, singing a song and saying a Torah and saying a story, these are all three ways of connecting to tzaddik. So obviously, when we're learning this Fabrengen right now, 5,784, by listening and learning the stories of the Baal Shem Tov, it's an opportunity and a moment of blessing for all of us. So the Magid says that he said after the passing of the Baal Shem Tov, She'ilu hoya Baal Shem Tov, yoidea b'chaim chayuse b'midain. If the Baal Shem Tov would have known in his lifetime what the Baal Shem Tov affects by being close and encouraging and supportive to the people, to the simple folk, as he knows now, meaning now after his passing, the Baal Shem Tov's understanding of what he was accomplishing is on a higher level. So the Magid, his student and his successor, said, had the Baal Shem Tov known in his lifetime what he was accomplishing with his supporting and encouraging the simple people, he would have done it even different and even more. Meaning that even when the amount of encouragement and support and love the Baal Shem Tov showed to the simple people, had he known how important it was, and how much nachas ruach, how much pleasure he gives God by doing that, he would have done it even in a different way, i.e. a higher way, and he would have done it even more. Well, the higher, the Rebbe says, the point is, it's known, we know that even while the Baal Shem Tov lived in this world, in Ibelel Shabbos Kodesh on Friday night, which is coming up, 2/3 of the Baal Shem Tov was in the higher worlds, and only 1/3 of his being, soul, body, and all, was in the physical world. And on the other days of the week, meaning not Shabbos, it was the opposite. 2/3 were in this world, and 1/3 was in the higher world. But he was never disconnected, even consciously or subconsciously, from the higher worlds. Nevertheless, the Magid says, he still didn't have the awareness and the clarity that he has when he's fully in the world of truth, meaning when he passed away. Says, had the Baal Shem Tov known after his lifetime, during his lifetime, as he knows now after his lifetime, what he accomplished with his support and love for the simple people, he would have done it even more. Okay, so page 78. After the previous Rebbe said this, now the Rebbe says the Rebbe is telling over the story that on Shavuos that the previous Rebbe said in the year, what was it, 1936, I think, right? 1936. So it said Tafresh Sadik Vav. Shapam Yashav Baal Shem Tov Besudus Rosh Chodesh. Once the Baal Shem Tov was sitting at a Rosh Chodesh meal. It's a custom some people have, or more than some people, to have a special meal on Rosh Chodesh. And those who were sitting made an observation. He looked disengaged, like he says in Yiddish, abgetrogen. Abgetrogen means he was distant from He was in another place. So, hey Lord, Velulai Simcha, and he wasn't in a happy mood. The Baal Shem Tov was always very happy, and this time the Baal Shem Tov was not openly happy. V'atalmidim, the students of the Baal Shem Tov, shekfar yadu be'ezei fanim yochel lifal al Baal Shem Tov, lotzes mimam de'maitzav zeh. And the students, when they saw this, the Baal Shem Tov in kind of a disengaged or in a distant, maybe not happiest moment, they knew how to right away affect change in the Baal Shem Tov's moods. Also, they did, hey Howard, they did different things to try to make the Baal Shem Tov become in a happier, more lively, focused mood, and they weren't successful. So the Talmidim, the great students of the Baal Shem Tov, he had amazing students, right? The great students. Baal Shem Tov is not something's holding him back, and the students cannot affect the change in the situation. So a simple person happened to walk in on the meal. Reb David. Who was this person? He was the simple person known as, or we know him as, is Reb David. When as soon as this Reb David came in, the Baal Shem Tov told him to come over. And he sat him next to him, meaning in a seat of honor. He had all the great students. And he gave him part of his hamaiti, part of his lechem, his bread. And that changed the mood of the Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov wasn't in the best of moods. He was disengaged. The students were trying to affect the change. They weren't successful. When this simple person, Reb David, comes in, the mood of the Baal Shem Tov automatically changes after he brings him to sit next to him, etc. You have to remember, everything the Baal Shem Tov did, his students studied. Every mood he had, every excitement or everything they knew meant something that was beyond their understanding. And they always would watch everything the Baal Shem Tov did and question him. So here the Baal Shem Tov is not in a great mood, and they can't change it. And this Reb David, who's a simple person, all of a sudden the Baal Shem Tov gets simcha again. So it became very wondrous and questionable to the students. How is it possible? The students with all their efforts. What kind of efforts did they use? They weren't telling the Baal Shem Tov jokes. It was because the Baal Shem Tov, everything about the Baal Shem Tov was an expression of godliness and holiness. So they were trying through Torah to change the mood. They couldn't affect on the Baal Shem Tov. But Dafka, specifically, Ish Pashat comes a simple person. Evidently, he was extremely simple. Paral Miyad, immediately coming into the story, into the sitting, to the meal, he affected on the Baal Shem Tov to be happy. And the Rebbe is telling over in the year 1967 of the story that was told in 1937, means 30 years before, that the previous Rebbe said in Shavuos. And the story is that the Maggid told over the story, and the Maggid himself was wondrous. You have to remember who these students of the Baal Shem Tov were. We're talking about the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, talking about the Maggid, the Mizrich, the Hafla, great people. So here the Maggid himself, who's the successor, he himself doesn't understand what's going on. The Baal Shem Tov, Shehirgish b'tmiyas ha-talmidim, as soon as he saw that the students were wondering what happened, how did this Reb David affect change in the mood of the Baal Shem Tov? So in order basically to get Reb David to leave, so he wouldn't say something to make him uncomfortable in front of them, he found something for the Reb David to do. He gave him a chore, a job, maybe to go to do X, Y, and Z, whatever. It doesn't say what the job was, but basically told Reb David to go, please do something, so he could say something. So he could say something about this Reb David, obviously only positive, but he didn't want to embarrass him in front of. So Reb David would be out of the room, so he could explain. When Reb David left to do this chore for the Baal Shem Tov, so then Baal Shem Tov told his students about the essence of the character of Reb David. Reb David, who is this Reb David? The Baal Shem Tov says, Hayani was a poor person. He had a very hard time making a living. Just small amounts of change. He The whole time he would collect little amounts of money because he wanted to have not just an esrog. He could have said, "I'm a poor person, and what does God want from me?" So he said, no. He went and he collected as much money as he could, but it doesn't say if he collected it as charity or if he just saved up money. It seems like he saved up money from his little income, so he could be able to put this money towards a special esrog. He wanted to have a very muhudim. Muhudim means that it's a beautiful esrog with all the extra care that it should be 100%, even more than 100% kosher. Because he saved up enough change, evidently over the year, he was able to buy himself a really special, important, beautiful esrog. And he was so happy that he's having the opportunity to make a beautiful blessing on a beautiful esrog, al esrog muhuda, that he's so happy that he had the special esrog. When his wife said, "Well, what's going on, David? Why are you so excited?" He told her that over the year I saved up money, little change here and there, every little bit I could, so I could buy this beautiful esrog. She didn't appreciate the story. The Rebbe says that she was very bitter, tremendously bitter about their situation, their financial situation. And on top of that, on top of her bitterness of how difficult their life was, she hears that her husband was saving money so he could buy a special esrog, i.e., that the money wasn't going towards making the situation in the house a little easier. So things were so bitter that comes Sukkot, he's so excited that he has a beautiful esrog, and she's depressed and very bitter because she doesn't even have enough money to make the Yom Tov properly. Rosh Hashanah, Chag Sukkot, she couldn't make Rosh Hashanah, which is before Sukkot and then Sukkot. That even though that she was very disturbed, and the members of the family were disturbed that they were in such a difficult financial situation. She looked, and her husband's not sharing in their worry and bitterness about their financial situation. And she was upset. Basically, she sees her husband's all happy because he has a beautiful esrog. And how does he have the esrog? Because he saved up change. Not that the change would have been around today on the Erev Yom Tov because it wasn't that much money, but either way, the bottom line was her husband was happy, excited. She was bitter. Her family was bitter. She wasn't. They weren't meeting on an emotional. They weren't in the same place. And because of her very desperate situation, and she was upset, because she was so bitter and she was disappointed in her husband. Obviously, it was affecting their happiness, their shalom bayis. She took the esrog. It's a famous story. She took the esrog and she bit off the pitum. She grabbed his esrog that he saved money for the whole year, and he was so excited to be able to do the mitzvah. But it's not her fault. She's bitter because of the financial situation. And then on top of that, her husband's so excited. So she grabbed the esrog and bit off the pitum. And we know the halacha that if the pitum of the esrog falls off, the esrog is no longer kosher. So now he saved.
Aaron,
Aaron is an Aaron.
So now he saved all this money and he's so excited to do the mitzvah, and now he doesn't have anything, doesn't have an esrog. The esrog is not kosher, he can't use it. So how did he react to this story, right? So here he has a story. He saved money, his wife is bitter, she has a right to be bitter. The Bal Shemtov is no one's discussing what happened. This is the story of life. So how did he react though? He didn't get overwhelmed, he didn't get angry, he didn't get he didn't get upset. He right away thought to himself, she's right. He right away justified his wife's behavior. He said he right away judged himself, not her. He said, who am I to have such a beautiful esrog? Why am I even worthy to have such a beautiful esrog? Not only because if he's a poor person, but who am I? This is a beautiful esrog, and I'm not worthy. My wife was right to react this way. And here, the Baal Shemtov continues in talking about the poverty, the situation of this Reb David. And it was right before this whole story happened, right before Yom Tov. So she bites off the esrog. He has nothing. Now he doesn't have simchas Yom Tov. He doesn't have food. He doesn't even have one of the four species to make the mitzvah. He had no money to buy a second esrog. It wasn't like he went back on his credit card and bought a second esrog. That's all the money he had. He saved the whole year for this esrog. He has nothing. Not a kosher esrog, not a beautiful esrog, not a beautiful esrog. He has nothing. So he had no choice in those days, and I guess till today also. They had community esrogim. So if someone couldn't afford a lulav and esrog, so you went to the community, wherever in the shul, where you can make a blessing on the community esrog. But evidently, that what would happen, that it wasn't just that anyone could come in and use the community esrog. You had to be a member of the esrog club, meaning that everyone had to give, let's say, a few dollars to be part of the esrog club, because the halach is it has to be lachem. You have to have ownership of lulav and esrog. So what they do, the community had a fund. The people would pay money towards the fund, and everyone had a partnership in this lulav and esrog. But he didn't even have the minimal amount of money, which obviously wasn't too much, to be able to participate in the community esrog. He didn't want to give something as a collateral. Because if he would give something like a valuable for the community to hold as a guarantee, that's not enough of a payment halachically, so he could have proper ownership. He felt that if he would give a collateral as so to say, that he would loan him ownership, because he would give something. Let's say he would give a watch or something of a small value. He obviously didn't have nice things in his house, but he didn't want to even do that, because halachically it's not really, it's tashlumim. It's not so simple that's proper ownership of the lulav and esrog. And he felt that the people, in order for the people that he should be able to have ownership of the esrog, they have to want to give him ownership of the esrog with a full heart. And if he showed up to the club and said, "I don't have money to participate in the communal esrog, well, take my watch as a collateral until I get the money," he felt they would do it, but not with a full heart, and then it wouldn't be really that he would be part of the club, so he wouldn't have ownership of the esrog. So what did he do? He couldn't give a mashkin. So he didn't want to. He came. He took a vessel of the house, something of value, small value, and he gave it to the Gentile. And he took a loan of cash. Again, so he went to a pawn shop, right? And he got some value for something. So he was able to participate in the communal esrog. So here the Bal Shemtov is describing to his students, and the previous Rebbe is telling this over 1936, and the Rebbe is telling this over 1967, and we're learning it today about who this Rebbe David is, who changed the mood of the Bal Shemtov. So he saved this whole year to be able to buy a beautiful esrog. His wife, bitter about her situation, which she was right. Bitter, I mean, she felt, it was obviously, it wasn't like she was just expressing the difficulties and pain she had in her life. She bit off that petum, and now the esrog is not kosher. He doesn't get angry. He says she's right. But he doesn't even have money to join the communal esrog, so he has to go to the pawn shop and get some money so he could join the communal esrog. Page 79. Mizeh Royim, when the Rebbe says that from this we see Kama Godla Aniyah, how poor of a person he was. He had nothing. He couldn't even participate. How much do you think it cost to participate in the communal esrog? It wasn't $100. It was probably equivalent today to $5. He didn't even have a small amount. A really small amount, which really started Vesser Akal to join the community esrog. V'sam Bal Shemtov. So the Bal Shemtov finishes off the story and he says, "Shinisayin kazeh." This test that the person went through, right? What was the test? The test was everything. His whole life is difficult, and then he tries to have one beautiful mitzvah, and he doesn't even get the opportunity to do that. The Rebbe says, imagine how difficult it was to exercise self-control and to not judge his wife, to not get angry, and to only blame himself. That it wasn't like he was trying to get a good esrog. He got it. He owned it. He bought it. He saved money a whole year for this esrog. And it was very hard for him to get this esrog. And his whole life, it wasn't like the year was good. It was a horrible year. But he had one ray of light, one sense of comfort, that he had a beautiful esrog. He had to go through the whole difficult year. And after all the efforts to put together the funds for this esrog, Shavra Zugase Sapitim, the wife goes and breaks the pitum. She bites it off. It's no longer kosher. Ve'af became shasak v'loiskas. He keeps quiet and doesn't get angry at all. Elikibu Zaisupashas, he took it in a simple way. He was makabel sadin. He accepted the judgment. The Rebbe says even more. It's not like Reb David was battling inside, bubbling inside to struggle and not get angry. He didn't even look at it as a test. He right away said, my wife is right. Who am I to have such a beautiful esrog? He never thought, he realized his wife was right, that he didn't deserve to have such a beautiful esrog. The Bal Shemtov said, amazing, listen to this, that from the time that our father Avram was asked by God to sacrifice Yitzchak on the Akedah, there wasn't such a test like this Reb David had to go through. It means the Rebbe is not even describing how difficult it was for him to the whole year he had to go through of collecting the money, just to have it, and his whole drive of the year was to have this beautiful esrog. There's so many components to the difficulties of this story. And nevertheless, he doesn't get angry. The Bal Shemtov says, from the time of the Akedah Yitzchak, from the time of our forefather Yitzchak, and there's many things that happen in between, there hasn't been a test like this, that a person who's, means the test didn't happen by chance. He was tested by God. Even Job, nothing came to the level of the test this Reb David had to go through, of his inner and outer reaction. Who Amid by, and he stood up for this, he was able to withstand the Nisayin. At Kan Divrei Rav. This is the story. So when the students want to know how this Reb David changed the mood of the Bal Shemtov asked Reb David to go try to make me a tea or something to get him out of the room so he shouldn't be embarrassed with the story. And the Bal Shemtov, who knows things from not because Reb David told him the story, he knows it because Bal Shemtov knows it from where the angels see the story. That he said, look at this, Reb David was able to withstand the test that hasn't been withstood since the time of our forefather Avram, when he was asked to sacrifice his son on the mountain. So the Rebbe says, Atkan Divrei Rav. Until now, this is up until here, what the previous Rebbe said in 1937, 36, presumably in either Riga or Poland, and on Shavuos, and the Rebbe saying it over in New York, 1967. The Rebbe says simply, why did the previous Rebbe say this story on Shavuos? Not a Shavuos story. So if anything, it's a Sukkot story. Because we know that on a yard side of the Bal Shem of a tzaddik, and Shavuos is the yard side of the Bal Shemtov, is a time we tell stories, we sing songs of the tzaddik. Therefore, it would make sense to say a story of the Bal Shemtov. And in order to say story of the Bal Shemtov, so that's a story that the previous Rebbe chose. And also, we can understand, the Rebbe is maybe going to add to this, but on a simple level, that's why he said the story. And also because there's a connection between simple people and the giving of the Torah. Why? What's the connection between the simple people and the giving of the Torah? The Gemara teaches us. Why was the Torah given here in this world? Why wasn't the Torah given like the angels asked in the upper worlds? Like Moshe Rabbeinu answered the angels. Because in this world, we have the Yetzer Hara, we have an evil side, we have the evil inclination that's pulling us to do, that's challenging our commitment and our resolution to do Torah. The angels have no challenge. Therefore, we need the Torah. The Torah comes down and says that don't listen to the Yetzer Hara. Everyone has these challenges. Sometimes the challenge is not the same challenge, but the concept of the challenge is all the same. We also know that there was an expression of simplicity by Matan Torah. Why? What did the Jews say to Moshe? We're going to do, and then we're going to understand. That means that they didn't exercise an intellectual approach to Torah. They used a simple approach to Torah. Whatever you tell us to do, we're going to do, and then we'll try to understand it. If we understand it, good. We don't understand it, it's okay. So that's all the Jews said. Nasav and Nishma. What is the idea of saying Nasav and Nishma? That's accepting upon yourself the yoke. With that, it means you don't analyze Torah, you don't analyze Judaism and say, wow, this religion makes sense for me. God said to the Jewish people, I'm here to give you the Torah. The Jewish people said, we will do, and then we will understand. Without first trying to understand. And what happened? 1,000 years later, 1,500 years later, one of the Gentiles tells the sage Rabbah or Rava from the Gemara, "I'm a Peziza, you're a wild people. The kadmise pumaychu ladinaychu, that you opened your mouth before your ears. First listen, does the Torah make sense, and then commit it." So he once saw Rava learning, and Rava was learning, his hands were bleeding from concentration. He said, you guys are foolish people. I'm Pezizi, you're wild people. First, you commit to Torah, because he saw that he was toiling on the Torah. Because maybe understand it first. Maybe it's too hard of a thing to understand. So why don't you look into Torah first? Listen to Torah. If it makes sense, then you could accept it. Because anu disagina b'shleimusa isalachnu imoy betum leiv ksiv bein toimim misharim tenachin. So inin hatimim sheyeshem miyuchad eitz anashim pshutim. So he says we did it in a complete, simple way, and meaning to say that the Jewish people, that's how they took Torah, as a wild people, that they used their ear, they used their mouth, means they accepted Torah before they listened, and that's a plus. That's not a chesaron. That's a behavior of simple people. A simple person is not going to say I have to understand first. If a simple person gets an order, the simple person does what's being asked of him. That's the Rebbe saying why seemingly the Rebbe said the story on Shavuos about the Bal Shemtov, because the Bal Shemtov passed away, and also about a simple person, Reb David, because there's a certain level of simplicity in the holiday of Shavuos. The Rebbe says that's not enough of a reason. Why? There's other stories of the Bal Shemtov. There's Anoshim Pshutim connected to simple people. So why does my father-in-law, meaning the Rebbe says the previous Rebbe, choose this story? He could have chosen any story. Like I said, this is a story to tell on Sukkot. It's not connected to Shavuos. Even to say that it wasn't just that this is a story about a simple person, but this is a story of a simple person that went through a challenge. He was tested. Shavuos has nothing to do with Akedah, aside from the fact that the shofar that was heard at the Matan Torah was connected to the ram of the Akedah. So Metzinu should be a Mekippur. Yeshna ha'inyan de bris Avram Yitzchak, the bris Avram bris Yitzchak. V'inyan ha'Akedah v'poil hay Rosh. We find that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur talks about there's the concept of the bris, the covenant of Avram and Yitzchak, and we know we learn about Akedah when on Rosh Hashanah. V'apiyah mavur b'chsidus, and as explained in the Chassidus, v'inyan b'kesel yem chagenu, that what's the idea of whatever is hidden b'kesel comes out b'yem chagenu on the holiday, meaning Sukkot. Shekol yanim shehem behelm Rosh Hashanah b'yem degil b'chag Sukkot. That there's a big connection between Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot. That the hidden lights, the hidden the hidden blessings, the hidden flow that comes down on Rosh Hashanah is revealed in the schach and the sukkah begili b'chag Sukkot. Again, it would make sense to tell the story on Sukkot because in Rosh Hashanah we read about the Akedah, so that Sukkot is connected to the Akedah. So therefore, it makes sense also that the test of this person was connected to Sukkot. Especially if you want, the previous Rebbe says, what the Bal Shemtov said, that since the time of Avram Avinu, there wasn't such a test in the world. So it would make sense. This is a test like on a Rosh Hashanah connected to Rosh Hashanah. So why is the previous Rebbe telling the story in Shavuos? Yom Behegdim, the Rebbe says to understand, we'll try to go as far as we can. Something that the Rebbe said I spoke about on Shavuos. There's three things that happened on Shavuos. One is Matan Torah. Second is Batseres Meis David. We know that King David, i.e., this person's name was David. King David passes away on Shavuos. His talk was about Shem Tov and the passing of the Bal Shemtov. When he talked then, the Rebbe saying about himself that he spoke on the Shavuos of 1967. Although these didn't happen at the same time. Matan Torah happened 3,300 years ago. David died, 700-800 years after that, and then of course the Bal Shemtov died 2,500 plus years after that. There's a big gap in between these stories, these incidents. The very fact that they all happened on Shavuos, on the same day, means notwithstanding of the separation of time, the passing of the Bal Shemtov, the passing of King David, and the giving of the Torah are connected. Now we understand why the previous Rebbe tells this story on Shavuos. It has in it the three ideas of Shavuos. Bal Shemtov, first of all, it's about the Bal Shemtov. It's a story about the Bal Shemtov. It's a story about him. David, the person in the story, is David. His name is Mr. David, who is a simple person. David, it talks about this person, Reb David. We know many times there's stories of the Baal Shem Tov about simple people, but we don't know their name. In this case, we know their name. His name is Reb David. And the Rebbe says not only that, but the characteristic of the story is something that we could understand is connected to David. Meaning, even though David are two different people, seemingly. This is David who lived a simple person, a poor person whose wife bit off his pitum, and David HaMelech, King David, who lived in Jerusalem. But there's the characteristics of the two people. David HaMelech, what's one of the characteristics of King David? Although he was a king, as a king, he had to respect the job, so to say. He had to make sure that people respected the office of the king. As is told in Tanakh, that anyone who crossed David, who stepped over the boundaries, David wasn't shy to exercise a discipline. Shehenish as people who didn't behave properly to the office of the king, David had no problem exercising discipline. Love those people who were against David. And the Rebbe says as a negative, Shaul, which was seemingly humble, and therefore he kind of didn't care if people didn't respect the office of the king. That wasn't a good thing. David was, if you didn't respect the office of the king, David took full measurement of the law. And we have many stories that tell us about that. That didn't stop the fact that David himself was a humble person. Means again, humility isn't a person who's treated or is treated wrong. David HaMelech was so focused that, notwithstanding that he knew that he had to respect the office of the king, right? What's the point of a king? A king has to be the king, and if people don't respect the king, the whole system breaks. But he didn't change him as who he was as a person. He was a humble person. He says, I'm quiet. All the prayers of David from Tillim is of a humble person. Protect me, he says to God. I'm a chassid. He called himself a poor and a impoverished person. He spoke very humble about himself, but then it had nothing to do with the fact that David HaMelech understood that he had to protect the job of king. David, so too we find that this David, the whole idea of the story of this David was a humble person. He didn't think I deserve a beautiful esrog. Even though his wife disqualified his esrog by biting off the pitum, he doesn't get angry. He right away understood that the message that God, so to say, is showing him through his wife biting off the pitum is that he doesn't deserve to have such a beautiful esrog. What's the connection to Matan Torah with the story? Like the Rebbe said before, what was the whole idea of Matan Torah? Matan Torah is that we say yes, we're gonna do, and then we're gonna listen, which is also a sign of simplicity and Kabbalah soul. We don't have that much time. I just want to see what the Rebbe is going to get with the story. Rebbe's final lesson is obviously the power of simplicity. But let's just go a little further. We have a few more minutes. The Rebbe is like this. Why do we talk about an esrog? So we know that we talk about David, who was a simple person like King David. We talk about the Baal Shem Tov. We talk about the idea of Torah of Kabbalah soul. But why is there a story about an esrog? So if you even when it comes to the idea of the Jewish people saying that we're going to do and then we're going to listen, why taka? The Rebbe says everyone talks about the greatness of the Jewish people. And the Jewish people said, we're going to do and then we're going to listen. But it's not a logical response at the end of the day. The Gentile who tells Rava that you're Ama Peziza, you're wild people, that's taka true. How did the Jewish people take upon themselves the responsibility? Last is davar ma to do something before they knew what they're asked to do. Right? If someone comes to you and says, "Could you do something for me?" What does a normal person respond? What do you want me to do? Not yes. You don't say yes before you maybe you're not able to do it. So how did the Jewish people say yes before they asked, before they're, even if it's God talking to them? Like the Tzedeki tells Rava, that you used your mouth before your ears. First listen. If you could do it. If you can't, then you say to God, sorry, we can't do it, not because you don't want to do it. It means he sees Rava's hands are bleeding from studying. Because if it's so difficult, why did you say yes? First listen, maybe it's too hard for you. The Rebbe says seemingly the Tzedeki is right. So what does it say? It says Jewish people like an apple in the orchard. So it says about a tapuach, a tree, an apple, that the fruit comes before the leaves. So to the Jewish people said, yes, we're going to do before they're going to listen. Before we understand, we're going to do it. Just like the fruit comes before its protection. Why is the leaf? What's the leaf? The leaf is there to protect the fruit. And here the fruit comes before the protection to say that we're here. And then hopefully we'll be protected. Let's skip the brackets. The Gemara says over there, the Tosfos brings down, picture Rabbeinu Tam. The famous Rabbeinu Tam asks a question. So it says, what is the tapuach? So the tapuach is the esrog fruit. It's not an apple. What does it mean that it smells like an apple? We translate kirechad esruga. It's brought down in the Targum like the smell of an esrog. The esrog pir koydem levin. The Rebbeinu Tam says that by apples we see that the leaves come first. So what fruit does the fruit come first? So the Rebbeinu Tam says it's talking about an esrog. Shadar be'ilam mishan l'shana. We know the esrog, unlike the leaves that fall, the esrog stays a whole year on the tree. V'achas shana nation olav shall nation olav shall ishtakid u'boin lavacherim. And after the end of the year, the old leaves leave and the new ones come. So therefore, the fruit that means if most trees the leaves do come first, but because the esrog, the Rebbeinu Tam says that the esrog stays a whole year, so eventually in the fall the leaves fall down and then comes the new leaves. So that fruit is there before the new leaves. The kan royim as a shayach shel esrog v'chag Shavuos. That's the connection of esrog to Shavuos. Because the esrog represents the concept of before the trees, before the head of Reb Shimon, before the plant, before the leaves. That's the example of Nasiv Nishma. The fruit comes first, and then our protection. First we're going to do, then we're going to understand. So that's why the Bal Shemtov tells over the story. That's why the previous Rebbe tells the story of the Bal Shemtov about a person called David, about an esrog on the holiday of Shavuos. And therefore, the Rebbe finally finishes this off. This is what we're going to learn today. And if you think that you walk away learning a story of the Baal Shemtov, you have to know a story of the Baal Shemtov. Besides the things that you don't understand in the story, there's the things that you do understand in the story. And just learning a story about the Baal Shemtov and about a person who's experienced a nisai in a test that wasn't tested since the times of Avraham Avinu is itself a worthy thing to study. That's why the previous Rebbe told this story. Even Sheish by calling Yanamanal, Sibir Bal Shemtov, it's a story of the Bal Shemtov. Or this Ish Pashat Shmoy David, about a simple person, like King David had a simple side to him. Shayetz La'inin Habitel, that he was a humble person. Shazau Yanish Al David HaMelech, Shavisi V'Demamti, I'm quiet. V'Shaychas Esrog, it's about an Esrog, which talks about the idea of Nasa Nishma. And therefore the Rebbe says, when I finish off, the Rebbe says, what's the last line the Rebbe says? The Rebbe finishes off like this. We're just going to read the last paragraph of 82. When it comes to the inner learnings of Torah, the teachings of Torah, which were brought down and taught to us by the Bal Shemtov, is connected to Shavuos, which is the Bal Shemtov's Yortzeit. That through the Bal Shemtov, the inner secrets of Torah came as a parnasa. It became not just the outside learning, but it came part of the sustenance of the Jewish people. That the Jewish people are understanding the teachings of Chassidus. Chassidus Chabad was about understanding the ideas of Chassidus. That through the Bal Shemtov and the Alter Rebbe, we're able to understand the inner secrets of Torah. But like it says, with this publication, meaning the publication of the Zohar, the teachings of Chassidus, of Kabbalah, we're going to get out of the Gullus, not just out of the Gullus, but barachmim, with compassion. And we'll be worthy to study the Torah of the Mashiach. Like it says, Yishakenim Mashikas Piu, what it says about the studying, the learning of the Bal Shemtov, that it's going to be like a kiss of the mouth, Shiniskala B'Geula Amitis, that's going to be revealed, V'vias Mashiach Zetkenim Makarav Mamish, in the coming time with Mashiach. Good Shabbos, I got to run, guys, and a good Shabbos and a good evening. Take care.